Hey guys, Anthony with Australian Weapons Guild here with Anna. She's helping out tonight. Again, we are at Vigilante, our new home away from home, always get everything figured out. Again, tonight we are working on more of Meyer's Rappier, Meyer's side sword. Building off of last week, we're going to do the second half of the parrying descriptions in his Art of Fencing, or Art of Combat. So jumping right into things, most of these positions are starting either from, again, from a low guard here. We'll see Iron Gate, which is kind of out with the point up. Now he uses long point, which is what Meyer calls his thrust position for this. Kind of working through those things. We'll get into them as we go. First one is a hanging parry, or the hanging parry. So I'm going to start in my low guard. As she cuts and as she attacks in, I'm going to raise up, and I'm parrying with the flat. And this is something for me that's not intuitive, because when I think of a flat, you can kind of see I don't have that structure. I don't think braced out, but I am able to use my thumb to come around, push, and setting off, and controlling and stopping from here. So that's kind of the main takeaway of the hanging, is we want hand above our head. We're going for that almost ox-like position, but we want to drop that point down and really use our flat to catch. And we're trying to use that to push away and press out from our right to our left. So as she cuts in, step up, see I can control, press and work, and start working actions from there. I'm not going to go through the devices and set plays he kind of has from there. My goal again tonight is just highlighting these positions, what he talks about, how to use them, and kind of going off of that. So one more time with the hanging before we move on. I start low. As she steps in, turn, press out, and I really want to just get my first hand over my head, point down, my flat engaged, so I can press out and move. If I need to lean, or whatever else, my options start working from there. The second one tonight, sixth one in Meyer's book, is the barring, which is very unexpectedly lazy, unexpectedly nonchalant for a lot of this stuff. So again, we're starting with that low guard, and this time I'm making the opening the outside of my right leg, so she has to really cut across, coming in low, against working from there. So as she makes that cut, I'm just going to drop and get my sword down. And as I do that, Meyer says he doesn't really express how. I just kind of walk away from the cut a little bit, whether take my lead leg offline, whether I pass through out here to cover. But this is very much just making a wall. And so I can really just, no matter where I am, if she makes that low attack, I can just think about putting that sword there. And this is really about stopping her from moving through and fighting for the center. So if we look at that where I don't bar, where I could do something else or do that chasing cut we did before. So as she cuts, now she's back out and free and is able to keep her flow moving, is able to keep throwing multiple attacks. I don't have that stopping control. And that really seems to be one of the highlights, focal points that Meyer gets into with lots of his pairing, is they're not just pushing things aside and letting them bleed off, but it really feels like we're trying to stop and arrest the attacker's momentum, ideally trapping them low, trapping them down, getting yourself on top. And of course, that's going to make sense to me and make me really happy coming from my Sword and Buckler 133 background, where everything is about getting the top position, pressing it down. A lot of these pairing motions are tending towards that same idea, right? Even the hanging we just did, even though I'm up high as she cuts, right? Even though I'm high, I still have the ability, if I want, to press down to control and lock out and chase after. This barring, this low cut from the outside. So as she cuts, I'm really just about stopping their weapon from coming across. If I want, I can trap down. If I want, I can cut through. I can turn a thrust in from underneath if I need to. But I have a lot of options related to stopping my opponent's momentum and really getting that moment of control of their attack, of their flow. Related to this barring, and this is from Meyer, he says, once you kind of understand how barring works, he kind of gives two more applied examples of what the barring is and how else it shows up, things from that. The first is I think it was a striking through. So this is one again, I can start in my low guard. As she cuts, as she thrusts.
You want me to thrust or cut?
Either or. Right? I'm going to come up, getting my sword up so I can cut and press across. And I'm really looking to make that cut here. And if you notice, now I'm back into that same position we had just before. One of the distinctions on this is that as that attack comes in, he wants your front leg to kind of gather back. So as this attack would come, right, assuming she'd be in distance here, if I slip back, I'm pulling myself out of that range. That also gives me the tempo to actually attack her weapon, right? So this is, I'm not say the first time Meyer has us attacking the weapon in these parries, but compared to the other ones where I'm just upsetting and setting aside, other things is a very small motion. This feels very much like I'm an attack. So I'm going to step away, attack the weapon. So this way, if I happen to miss, or if she's cutting and I'm trying to change after it, right? As I come here, if this doesn't work as well as I want it to, I'm still that step removed, able to reset back if I need to further distance. I'm just giving myself a little more time, opportunity to play. But by just drawing in to this central position, I can move any direction I want right now with either foot. So I really have a lot of mobility options, a lot of footwork options that I'm setting myself up for. But again, this is very, very distinctly cutting at that weapon. So as she's thrusting, she's cutting, it doesn't matter. I'm going to come up, bringing the sword up so I can cut across to control. And it's going to be very similar to that bar we just talked about before, but this time with an active cut, placing through, working from there. The final option he talked about starts off on the left side, whereas everything else has been on the right. So this can do from, right, so we can do it from change, which is low and across the other side. We can kind of go from left flug over here, or left low guard rather, in kind of this position like that. But we really want everything to the left, so it's unique in this instance. Other thing that's worth noting is he wants the short edge towards the opponent. So that Vexel type position, this sword is down and low, my back edge is up. If I do stay in a higher position, I want to make sure I'm still keeping that short edge towards my opponent for this action. So now as she cuts, cutting in, I'm going to bring my back edge up and across. And again, looking for that same kind of cut pressing down. But instead of following this down, I'm going to actually throw this cut with enough power to swing back through ox. Right, so start low, as she cuts, bringing this up, and then putting the point back on mine. So notice again, this is taking multiple actions to get my point back on mine. I can do any of the past examples we've done with that second tempo, second action of cutting around to get my point back on mine. So it's interesting that he's really emphasizing it here where he's not in the other ones. And my instinct for that is that as this cut's coming in, right, if we just kind of stop the play here, I have less control. Her weapon can change under, can come around and attack and do all sorts of things that's going to waste my actions. So I need to really make sure with this one, my only good option, right, is making sure I get that point back online as soon as I can. Because now if I don't want my thrust, now if she attacks and comes back through, I can go back to one of the other options we just did to keep myself safe and pressing out. So be very mindful with this last one, this short edge taking away, or I forget how he describes it. It was not a simple word like all the other ones were. But being sure that as you're working this, that if you do come here, this one should be coming back online. And that really feels like the only option, whereas if I do any of the other ones we've talked about today, or if I go back to my hanging position, right, here, I can do lots of things. She's isolated, she's locked out. I can grab, I can twist, point over, right? I can press down, do my short edge over again. I have lots of options, but this final one, the short edge taking, is very much I need to be sure that I'm ready not only to threaten her and make her feel unwell about things, but this position leaves me lots of great defensive opportunities to keep myself safe as well. Because if she doesn't realize she's about to get stabbed in the face and just throws that cut, I can easily turn that into the barring we just talked about, which then lets me work my other actions, other attacks. So recap these last 4 from tonight. So we started off with hanging, starting in the low guard. She attacks, hand up, point low. I'm using my flat to catch. And he talks about very explicitly driving across, driving from there. We have barring, which is cutting to the outside of your lower openings. So that's really just simple as that cut comes in, kind of pull your leg away either by a step with either foot, letting the sword just come straight down. If you want to be very evocative of what you're looking for, I'm almost putting my point in the ground and saying, nope, this is a wall. You don't get to get past this anymore. I'm just going to come around over here and do whatever I want. Playing off of that barring idea, we had 2 different kind of options, 2 different takeaways. Starting in my iron gate, iron door, as the attack comes in, I'm drawing myself back, bringing up this weapon so I can cut this across. You'll obviously see a very similar position. My point's way down, almost down, well, almost not on the ground from my position here, but pointed straight down, very similar to where we were with the barring, which is just the drop. And the final option from tonight was working on that Vexo, that left side guard that comes in, stepping through, and just being sure to let that flow around to that point forward present attack. So that wraps up Meyer's parrying devices, or at least the concepts he talks about. He does go on later to say that these short edge and long actions he talks about at the end, you can do with the flat or with the short edge, and that you should be able to do, basically apply these concepts throughout everything. He then goes on to talk about saying, like, we also talk about this a lot in the deuce axe section, the longsword section, and it just really helps tie together this idea that everything Meyer talks about, everything Meyer does is a holistic system, and it should be this idea that, you know, just because you're holding effectively a side sword or a Meyer's rapier, that the longsword stuff still applies. The deuce axe stuff still applies. Like, this is still a slashing weapon, unlike the Italian rapiers at the time, or what we consider Italian rapiers. So you need to be able to do kind of everything as the weapon changes, and all those concepts, all those ideas should bleed through to your fencing. So as always, if there are questions or comments, please feel free to reach out, comment below, message us on Facebook, email us, anything like that. Otherwise, guys, have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday with more of the Jude Liu longsword. Thanks.